Okay, I understand that we have competition tonight with the incredible basketball game that's going on upstairs. So we have the Ruchnius and the Gashmius, and wherever a young lady finds herself tonight, it should be a chizuk either way. There's no crime in exercising. Opens up the endorphins, gives a person kayach and energy, and they can serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu even better. It's very hard to believe that this Shabbos is going to be Chodesh Mevarchim of ELUL. The story is told by Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, that in his time when he was living in Russia before he came to America, he remembered being a young boy, and when the chazan in the shul would announce on the Shabbos before Elul, Rosh Chodesh Elul, and the women in Ezras Nashim would hear that words, that chant, that mysterious chant of the chazan, they would all fall over in a dead faint in the Ezras Nashim. Just to hear the words Elul, to know what it means, is coming this month, made all the women, the Neshei Chayil of Klal Yisrael, with their Yirah Shamayim, and their sensitive neshamas, and their connection to the world of Ruchnias, to the world of Tshuva, to the world of mitzvahs and averas, they would fall over in a faint. And it always bothered me that if you think about that story, and you think about what goes on in the Ezras Nashim across the world in Klal Yisrael, probably since that took place, I'm not sure that you ever found a single woman in an Ezras Nashim who fainted when she heard Elul, let alone an entire Ezras Nashim. And the question always bothered me is, why should that be? What has changed so drastically from the days of Moshe Feinstein, which is really less than 100 years ago? He came to America, I believe, in the 1940s, right before the outbreak, or 1930s, right before World War II. So we're talking about 90 years. So 90 years ago, women did faint, and now we don't know what fainting even means. What has changed? I was thinking of the following idea. If you put yourself in the place of these Neshei Chayil from 90 years ago, 100 years ago, 110 years ago, and they were living in Europe, they were either around the time of World War I or right after World War I, the world and the civilization was a very different place than it is today. The majority of all of Klal Yisrael lived a life of not just poverty and anius, but abject poverty. They did not have much. They had a little tin shack. The water carrier came around with some water. If they were lucky, there was a cow around that they could get some milk from. There were no butchers, shops the way that we have. There were no stores the way that we have. There was no bisli. Could you imagine growing up in a generation? No sushi, no bisli. It's enough to make you faint. And so these women, they came from a house, there were no maids, they were cleaning and they were sweeping the small little floors that they had. They were going down to the river, they were washing the clothing. There was cold, there was hot, there was rain coming in through the ceilings. The wind would blow in through the broken windows. When they ran out, when their clothes got too small, they found some kind of a magical seamstress way just to enlarge the clothing. Another year. No Estes, could you imagine? What will you do when you go to Lakewood if you can't go shopping at your 700 favorite clothing stores for women? What's going to be? They had nothing. They had a very hard life. Not to mention that, let's think, what if a person got sick in those days? What if they got a cough, a bad cough? Say it's bronchitis, not even pneumonia. They got bronchitis. There was no antibiotics. There was no CVS. There was no medicine cabinet in your house that you could go into and you could see, what should I take for this cough? Cough and cold, cough and flu. What exactly is it? Nothing. You got a cough, you got fevers, you had chills, your body was racked in pain. Your mother did some kind of incantations that she learned from her mother and from their savta. And if you were zeiche, you could survive the bout of bronchitis. But if you were not zeiche, and the cough went somewhere into the lungs in the wrong place, and it turned into pneumonia, chances are you could die. So people got sick. People had major diseases that were going on. Medicine was primitive. The treatments that you could get did not exist. There were no hospitals with big machines that could be life-saving machines. Didn't exist. If you got Rahman al-Tzan, a machala, if you got some kind of a disease, your intestines were twisted around inside. Finished. It's over. A person's life came to an end, or if they survived, it was a miserable existence because they were so sick and depleted for the rest of their lives. Not to mention, we're talking about a time of pogroms. The Goyim despised Klal Yisrael. They were rabid anti-Semites. They could beat up a Jew in the street just for being a Jew. They would make pogroms where they would go and lynch and they would kill and they would murder, and there was nothing that anybody could do. They got away with bloody murder, literally. The priests were on their side, the church was on their side, the government was on their side, the police were on their side. It was death and trials and difficulties and sickness and poverty and the ruach, the spirit in the world, the crazy culture and everything that was going on that was sucking kids away from Yiddishkeit in those days, haskalah, the enlightenment. It was the biggest enemy of the ruchnius of Klal Yisrael. There wasn't a mishpacha kimat in all of Europe that escaped unscathed from having one, if not more, of their children ripped away from Yiddishkeit because of the haskalah. So now imagine you're that woman who's gone through that year in that small village or that small town somewhere in Europe. And you know, yes, of course, there's brachas and there's good things. All of that is true. There's nothing like a Heilige Shabbos sitting around the table together with your family. There's nothing like saying Tehillim and connecting to Hashem. There's nothing like a Simcha, Bar Mitzvah, a Kiddush, a Bris, or a Chasana, of course. But a bulk of the lives of these women that were living in those generations, it was very hard and difficult, breaking kind of lives. And they saw the gezeres of HaKadosh Baruch Hu all around them. Everywhere they turned, everywhere they looked, every bit of news that they heard, the winds of war. It was between World War I and World War II. The world was never settled. The Horowitz said that once that World War I came to the world would never be the same again. And he was right. Not long after was World War II, and there was a Holocaust that came along with it. So the world was a whole different place. And then the woman standing in the Ezra's Nashim, and she knows what has taken place the last year since she was standing there. She knows who died in her family. She knows how much money they don't have. She knows what the poverty was like, the freezing, brutal winter. She knows about the pogroms. She knows about all of that. And then the Chazan screams out, Rosh Chodesh Elul. She knows Ribono Shel Olam, Yom Adin is coming. What's going to be this year? She drops dead in a faint. So how are we supposed to relate to that? Baruch Hashem, the average Jew that's living here in America is living a life of affluence compared to what they had 100 years ago. You have a house with doors and windows that close. You have heating in the winter. You have air conditioning in the summer. You have carpets to make sure that your feet don't get cold when they touch the ground in the morning. You have running water in the house. Did I leave that out? They don't have running water in the house. Then they go away from the house to pump it out to get the water. You have running water, you have plumbing, you have showers. You have markets all around you. You get hungry, you go to the store, and if the store is closed, you'll just order Uber Eats, and the next thing you know, voila, kosher food at your doorstep. Lenny's Casitas, just the way that you like it. We live such a good life over here. Our clothes are not wearing out. You go to the store, you order online, you take a trip, a one-day trip with mommy to Lakewood or Borough Park, shop up for the entire year, come back home with suitcases filled with clothing. You're all set. Sickness, you have a headache, take Tylenol. You have a cold, you go to the doctor, he'll prescribe you a medication. One antibiotic doesn't work, so you take another one. Something a little bit more serious, you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital, you get a treatment. It's all okay. Everything is okay. And anti-Semitism, pogroms, Jews getting lynched in the streets, getting accused of crimes that they never committed, blood libels and the like. We're living in America. Everybody loves us. It's a wonderful world. You have shuls, you have schools, you have Beis Yaakovs, you have Chedarim, you have yeshivas, you have koilas, you have a city called Lakewood that's the biggest city of Torah in the entire world. Even in Los Angeles, how many shuls on this street alone, how many schools, how many kids going to learn Torah every single day? And nobody stops you. Nobody accosts you in the street. You don't hear any wild stories. So how is it that when the month of Elul is announced in Shul, this Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Elul, we're like, okay, pretty good year, not bad. Take it again. But we all know that this year was not like any other year. And maybe this is what we have to think about on Shabbos. By Chodesh Mevarchim. Since Simchas Torah of this past year, the world and Klal Yisrael and our lives have not been the same. Now, we have a disadvantage in how we understand it because we are thousands of miles away from that which took place in the kibbutzim, which took place in Eretz Yisrael, which took place at the Nova Festival. We're thousands of miles away. We only heard. We only saw stories. We didn't see the gruesome pictures and the details of exactly what it looked like of a woman whose body was sliced in half, Rachmana litzlan lo aleinu, or children that were placed into ovens and they were cooked together, or parents and children that were tied up together and burned to smithereens. I hope that we didn't see the pictures, but we heard the stories. But believe me, Hatzalah and Zaka and the soldiers and Shoyrim and Misaskim, whoever it was that was around there, they saw things that the head of Hatzalah, Reb Eli Bir, said he has not been able to sleep a regular night's sleep since then. When they will be standing in shul this Shabbos or Chodesh Elul, they know what a Yom Hadin means. They know what it is that the balance of life and mavis is mamish holding in the hands of Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch is making major decisions. He turned Klal Yisrael on its head this year. And although that Baruch Hashem, we were not there, we did not see, but we heard enough. Maybe you met enough people. Maybe you saw enough interviews. Maybe you heard something that a hostage said about the misery and the torture they went through. And we know that anti-Semitism, Taki, is building up all over the world. All over the world. There was a boy a few weeks ago in Crown Heights, Friday night, walking home. He was stabbed. Why? Because he was a yeshiva bacher. And the UN hates us, and the nations hate us, and everyone's against us. And when you walk the streets today and the goyim look at you, you don't know, what are they thinking anymore? What are they thinking about me? I walked into a store not so long ago and I felt that they're just staring, and I'm wondering, what are they thinking about? How do they view me? What do they think? I'm a person who believes in genocide? I'm a murderer? What do they think? So we all know very well that last year, Chodesh Elul, when we were thinking to ourselves, I'll take another year like that, Hashem. It's all good. Estes, burger bar, car with air conditioning, house with carpeting, plenty of food on the table, good friends, health, all the vacation in the winter and in the summer and somewhere around Pesach if you go to a hotel. I mean, we're all taking care of Hashem. It's a good life. We'll take it again. This year, when you hear that Chazan say on Shabbos, means you have to wake up before 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Shabbos. And you have to get to shul, depends where you are, somewhere around 10:15 or so. And you hear those words, those infamous words that have been leaving an edge of fear in the hearts of Nashim for generations. Rosh Chodesh Elul. We have to think, Rabbi Shalom, what a year we had. What a year Klal Yisrael went through. How many people were killed and murdered. How many Yisayimim there are. How many Almanos there are. You think an Almano who's standing in shul on Shabbos, whose husband was either killed on Simchas Torah or somewhere in Gaza in battle, you think she's not going to tremble? She's not going to cry? She's not going to faint? So Kol Yisrael, Arevim Zelazeh, all of Klal Yisrael, we're all connected. We are all one part of a bigger Klal. And therefore, if there are many hundreds and thousands of Jews that suffered this year from the decision that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, then all of us have suffered and all of us have been part of the tragedies of Klal Yisrael. And all of us have had a difficult year. So when we hear those words, Rosh Chodesh Elul, I don't know if you're going to faint, but at least tremble a drop. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu made big decisions last year. And we can never turn back from those decisions that he made. All we can do is try to move forward. And we are mispalel on this Shabbos, we are mispalel that whatever midas hadin there was in the world last year, whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu had in his mind while we were trying to be mamlechim, and he was acting as the melech ha'olam, the king of the universe, and he was making grand plans and decisions that Klal Yisrael was not expecting. The world was not expecting. Then perhaps we'll be able to use the days of Elul in a way that we've never used Elul before. What is the yesod of Elul? What is the secret? What is the koyach that is there in this month? I want to share with you some words from Rav Gamliel Rabinovich. He's one of the premier Kabbalists of our generation, but his koyach is that he's so down to earth and he's so normal, you would not realize what a makubal where he's holding in the lofty world of mysticism and ruchnius. And he writes the following words, B'chesed Hashem aleinu, because of Hashem's tremendous chesed upon us, Zachinu liyemei chodesh elu hana'alim, we are zeichet to these days of Elul that have come upon us. It's a chesed. We're going to bench Rosh Chodesh Elul on Shabbos. Monday night, I believe already is going to be Rosh Chodesh. The whole month of Elul is a chesed from Hashem. Asher nidnu lanu l'tikun ha'maisim. It was given to us as a month to be misakin, to fix up our actions. Ula'oires nafshenu le'elokeinu, to awaken our souls to Elokeinu, to our God, the Rabbi Shalom. Did you know that's what Elul's for? Elul's going to come. First of all, it's a chesed of Hashem. He doesn't have to give us an Elul. He doesn't owe us anything. We don't deserve anything, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in His infinite chesed, He says, I'm giving you these days for tikkun, to correct yourselves, to fix yourselves up, to awaken before the shofar comes on Rosh Hashanah. Be awake before the shofar comes. V'aleinu ladas, we need to know. Ki ze hachodesh hu matana toiva. The month of Elul is a wonderful gift. V'chemdo genuza, and a precious treasure. Shenetzo mi'ito yizbarach l'toivas Yisrael, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created and given for the benefit of Klal Yisrael, Amma, His nation, v'nachlasa, in His inheritance. V'nidno lanu miroi v'avosoi. He gave it to us because He loves us so much. That's why He has chosen us from all of the nations of the world. Elul is not just the days of Rotzain, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu desiring us and Rachamim and mercy. It is a gift, a matana toiva that HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulled out of His storehouse, His treasures. And He gives it to us every single year because He says, Yidden, I love you so much, I want you to have a schus before you stand in front of me on Rosh Hashanah. I want you to be close to me before the first tefillah of Mariv on Rosh Hashanah night. I want you to be this oira, to be awakened to tshuva before you hear the blast of the shofar on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which the Rambam tells us to waken us up. You could already be awake when you get there. I'm giving it to you because I care about you. I want to give you a chance. Wouldn't you like to prepare yourself for the judgment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring? You know, if Khalil, a person has a court case, and they got themselves into big trouble. They did something very sneaky with the law, cheated on their books. They did something, they got caught. The threat of them going into prison is very great. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years behind bars, not to mention the millions of dollars they're going to have to pay out in fines for cheating the government the way that they did. They're in big trouble. Do you think that guy's just going to show up the morning of the court case without any preparation, without a lawyer, without a team of experts who have gone through the whole judicial process and they know the ins and the outs, and they're going to be able to come with this argument and that argument, and defense and this defense? That guy's been shaking in his boots. He hired the top lawyer, the most that he could afford. He brought in all of the facts, all of the evidence in his favor. They told him, plead guilty and tell them that you have regret and you feel bad for what you have done, and maybe the judge will have mercy on you. And whatever he is told that he has to do, he's going to do it because he knows that's the way to find favor in the eyes of the judge, and hopefully justice will redeem itself. Rosh Hashanah is coming. Says Rav Gamliel Rabinovich, Lo hidianu ezman hamishpat kedei shenuchol yozmuchanim liyom pekuda. He's given us this month to prepare ourselves for the Yom Pekuda, the day of reckoning. So take advantage. Begin to examine your deeds from the previous year. Begin to look at your tefillas, your Shmoneh Esrei, your brachas, your Yirah Shamayim. Begin to look at your life. And we have to put it all in context. There was the life of a Beis Yaakov girl. Then there was the tzaddikus that you were when you were in Eretz Yisrael. And then there's coming back to Los Angeles. And it's very hard for someone to keep the balance and keep the steady momentum and his urus and the moving in the right direction. Very, very difficult. But it's still not an excuse. And therefore we have to be honest with ourselves and look at ourselves, examine ourselves and see, The Yom Pekuda, the day of reckoning is coming. Am I prepared to present my case? Am I ready to offer HaKadosh Baruch Hu a plea bargain? Am I ready to show him why it is that I'm better off this year than I was last year? And just like Hashem should have Rachmanis on me, please HaKadosh Baruch Hu, have Rachmanis on Klal Yisrael. This year Elul, this year Rosh Hashanah, this year Yom Kippur, it's not only about us. This is a din on all of Klal Yisrael. And the more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees how much we care about our fellow Yidden, and the more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that our hearts are bleeding in pain for the suffering of all the Almanas and the Yisayimim, and all the Levi's that took place, and all of the carnage and the tragedies and everything, and all the soldiers who did survive, but without legs and without arms and without ears and without hearing and everything in between. And Hashem sees how much we care about Klal Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, such a person who uses an Elul in the right way, who approaches their tefillah of Rosh Hashanah in the right way, they are going to turn away Midas Hadin, and they will lift up HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the Kisei Hadin, and they will place him on to the Kisei Rachamim, the throne of glory. Says Rav Gamliel, this is the chesed of Elul. He gives us time to prepare. He gives us time to warm up. You know, when you go, I guess the girls that are playing basketball upstairs, hopefully they stretched their muscles before they began playing. Because if you don't play that often and then you just jump into the game and you start jumping and you start passing, you start running, chances are that your muscles are very tight and you can end up pulling a muscle. But if you warm up and you do stretches and you stretch out the muscles so that they're loose and you're ready to play, you should be, barring any accidents, you should be just fine. The day of Rosh Hashanah is the most intense day of the year. 2 days of like 14 hours of davening. Long davening and tefillahs and standing and songs and nigunim and drushes and small short sudas. There's no time to eat kimat depending on where you daven. So you're going to walk into that marathon workout of ruchnius without warming up, without stretching your muscles of tefillah, without stretching your muscles of tshuva, without stretching your muscles of, please HaKadosh Baruch Hu, have Rachmanis on me. Says Rav Gamliel, that's Chodesh Elul. Chodesh Elul is the matana the Rebbeinu Shem has given us. He gives us a chance to warm ourselves up for the glorious days of Rosh Hashanah, says Yemei HaTshuva, and Yom Kippur. And he goes on and he writes, and he says, Dihirei b'Rosh Hashanah yesh chidush hamelucha. On Rosh Hashanah, it's like a new malchus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is renewing His kingdom. Vu bechinas yoim ha'oled is like the birthday of the Rebbeinu Shalom. V'mechalek ha'melech ma'atanos l'kol anshe ha'malucha. What does Hashem do what does the person do on the king do on his birthday? He feels very good, and all of his servants, everybody in the kingdom, they come to honor the king. What does the king do? He wants to show everybody what a benevolent king is. He begins passing out presents. He gives a gift to this one and to that one, and there's, I guess we'll call them party favors of the king. So everyone that comes to bestow honor to the king, they bring their presents, and the king in turn throws out his presents and his party favors and his gifts to them as well. Says Rav Gamliel Rabinovich, that is what Rosh Hashanah is. It's the birthday of the king. And Hashem is giving out gifts. What are the gifts? Shana Tovim Masukah, a good year. Another year of Chayim Tovim, of good life. Another year of Bracha, and Atzlacha, and Parnasa, and Shidduchim, and health, all the things. Those are the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to distribute to all of His children. And he writes, V'hamatani shebi yomim elu mekabel hamelech es b'nei Yisrael b'tshuva. And the greatest gift is that Hashem accepts our tshuva during these days. Even if we have not done all of the tshuva that we need to. Rabbi Yoda writes in Shari Tshuva, 20 different ways that you have to do tshuva. It's a whole process, 20 different levels. Halavai will do one. We'll have charata. Maybe we'll get to vidui, we'll confess our sins. Maybe we'll promise, Hashem, I'll never do it again. But all 20, tears flowing down our eyes and feeling bad for everything that we've done, but really bad, yoga, pain, never-ending pain. We're not going to get there. Says the Rav Gamliel Rabinovich over here, so don't worry about that. These are days of rachamim. These are days of mercy. These are a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the gift is, no matter what you do, no matter what you try, how hard you try, you're moving in that direction. The Rebbeinu Sha'olam will be makabel. He will accept your tshuva. Im kein kedai v'nochai, therefore it is worthy. L'natzel karoyas izdamuzu, to take advantage of the invitation. V'lashuv b'tshuva be'emes, and return during the month of Elul in truth, in emes. What a month we have coming. On one hand, we faint because we think to ourselves what took place. On the other hand, it's so exciting. The master of the universe, who's going to put us all on trial on Rosh Hashanah, says to make Tshuva Yom Kippur, he is telling us, this is what you need to do to prepare. Take advantage, 30 days. 30 days, Rosh Chodesh until Rosh Hashanah. Tshuva, Tikkun HaMaisim, examine your deeds, start making changes, see what you need to do better. Just do that. And says Hashem, you know what? I'll accept it. No matter what madrega, no matter what level, no matter how serious, no matter how stark your tshuva is, I know you're not going to get to the 20 levels of Rabbeinu Yonah. I'll accept what you do. I just want to see that you have taken the invitation, you hung it up on your fridge, and you saw Rosh Hashanah is coming. Get ready for the king's birthday party. How do you get ready? You have to look your best. Clean yourself up. Put on your nicest clothing. Big day love in the clothes of white, which means tshuva. You cleanse yourself out. Be excited to be mamlech Hashem. Look forward to the great simanim of the night of Rosh Hashanah, dipping the apple in the honey with all of the understandings of what that means to have a Shana Tova Mesuka, a sweet year. Blast of the shofar, what is it going to accomplish? Blast out all the evil decrees. But you can't just show up. You have to work out this month and get yourself ready for such a thing. One of the places in our Avodas Hashem that is perhaps the most important and that which demands an enormous amount of our effort, of our work, is what it says in the Parsha just a couple of weeks ago in Parshas Va'aschanan. Over there, the Torah says in the Shema, the second paragraph of Shema, these words which I have commanded you today, al levavecha, you should place them al levavecha, on your heart. So Rashi writes, you probably have heard this Rashi 1,000 times in your life. It says, Asher anoichi mitzavecha hayoim, the mitzvahs that I am commanding you, hayoim, today. Rashi is bothered. Were the mitzvahs commanded us today? You know where we're holding over here in the Chumash. This is the end of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. This is after 38 years of wandering around in the Midbar. That means the Torah was given 38 years ago. So when did HaKadosh Baruch Hu command us to keep the Torah and keep the mitzvahs? He commanded us 38 years ago when we were standing by Har Sinai and receiving the Torah. So why does it say, Asher anoichi mitzavecha hayoim, that I'm commanding you today? You're not commanding us today, Moshe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We were commanded almost 40 years ago by Har Sinai. So what is the pshat in hayoim in today? Says Rashi, Lo yiyu beinecha, the mitzvah should not be in your eyes. K'diyoikma yeshana, like an ancient edict from the king. She'ein adam seifna, that a person is not so excited about or doesn't find too important. Ella rather, how should the mitzvahs look to you? How should the Torah look to you? How should all of our avodah during Elul, how should it be in our eyes? Kachadasha, it should be like it's a brand new edict, like a brand new gezer from Hashem. Shakol ratzim ligrasa, everybody's running to read it. When the minister of the king comes to town, and you hear the trumpet, and he comes and he hangs up the sign on the tree, everybody comes to run to see what does the king have to say. What does the king want? What does he have to say? And he says, hear ye, the king has announced. What did the king say? Something new. What did he say? Says Rashi, it's called Chazal, says Rashi, that the Torah cannot be something that is old and boring and worn out in your eyes. It's not the same Shmoneh Esrei that you davened yesterday. It's not the same bracha that you said on an apple or your cereal or your dinner that you said yesterday or for the last 20 years of your life. Every single day, says Rashi, it should be kechadasha, like it's brand new, that we're running to see what HaKadosh Baruch has to say. Like it says, shakol ratzin likrasa, everyone is running towards it and they want to know, what does the Eibishter want of me? As we get older in life and we get more comfortable in our world of mitzvahs and we get more ragel, more accustomed to the mitzvahs that we are doing from our childhood and in our teenage years, and now as you are transitioning as Hashem into your married years, there are many things that we do, and it's just the same, or as they say in LA, same old, same old. How you doing? Hashem. How's it going? Same. Says Rashi, Chas v'chalila. A Yid could never say same old, same old. A Yid can never say, it's okay, Hashem. Same. No. It's kechadasha, it's supposed to be like it's brand new. Hayoim, today, every single day. Every day, a new opportunity. Every day, it's a new Shmoneh Esrei. Every tefillah, Shachris, Mincha, maybe the holy ones who daven Marav also, every tefillah is a new one. Every Shabbos is a new Shabbos. Every excursion to Estes is a new test. Is it tznius? Is it not tznius? I know if it comes from Estes, it must be that it's tznius. But not everything that is tznius is tznius. So you check yourself and you look in the mirror and you ask your friend who's with you or your mother who's with you, is it? Is it not? Kechadasha, what an opportunity. Every single time I engage myself in a mitzvah, it's fresh, it's new, it's exciting. When somebody remodels their kitchen and the kitchen is brand new, wow, they cannot wait to go and use that kitchen. If you had like some old 48-year-old bathroom in your house with the mold all over the tiles that are falling off, and you came back from seminary and your parents surprised you and they redid your bathroom. Taking a shower was never so exciting in your whole life. Why? Because it's new. It's different. It's exciting. Torah and mitzvahs is like HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. He's mechadesh, maisa, breshis, b'chol yoim. He's mechadesh, he renews maisa breshis every single day. He's mechadesh the world all of the time. Torah mitzvah is chiddush, it's supposed to be new and fresh and exciting. And when a person approaches his world of mitzvahs like that, we're not tired, we're not drained, we're not bored, we're not unenthusiastic, were actually excited about doing mitzvahs. And that's what the month of Elul is for. Chodesh, Elul. Chodesh is a lashon of chidush, of renewal. The month of Elul is to renew our commitments, is to renew and awaken ourselves, to begin to examine where are the old edicts of mitzvahs that we have done this past year, that there's no life to them. There's no enthusiasm in them. I'm as bored as I was when I was a girl in 6th grade who had no idea what my Mora was talking about. But I did it anyway, because that's what you're supposed to do. I was in the shul tonight before I came here, and there was a father learning with his son before Mincha. There's a chiddush. You see a father, they're not from LA, so they're traveling through, probably a son-in-law and a grandson of somebody who lives here, and they were sitting there and they were learning some very complicated mishnayos about korbanos. I was eavesdropping on their learning together. And so they learned before Mincha, and the kid was already in his, polo shirt. He's like in vacation mode, young kid, probably looked to me about maybe 12 years old or so. And Mincha and Marv, quite long. We're talking about a 45-minute from the beginning to the end. Mincha, a shir in the middle, and then Marv. And now it's 8 o'clock. The kid's already been in shul I got there 20 minutes before Mincha. He was already there learning. And now he's at 45 minutes. He's probably been in shul for an hour. The kid wants to go home. And as the kid is getting ready to put everything away, his father says, just grab the mishnayos. We're going to learn some more. Huh? The kid says, huh? He says, yeah. Mishnayos. We're going to learn some more. Kid looks at his father. Kidding, right? No. Come on. And then the father takes off his coat, getting himself comfortable. We're going to sit down and learn. The kid's on vacation. He's not interested in learning right now. We live in Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles, it sometimes feels like we are on vacation all year long. And we are not excited about the world of mitzvahs that Hashem has given us. And the Torah is telling us over here, if you want to succeed in mitzvahs, if you want to be mamlich, the Rabbi Shalom, you want to make him the king over you, make sure that you look at every single mitzvah as a brand new edict that the king is announcing Hayoim today. Today you got to daven Shachris, a brand new Shachris. Today you got to say bracha on breakfast, lunch, and dinner, brand new. Today you have to be careful with the laws of Lashon Hara. Make sure that you don't say that juicy words that you want to say. It's Hayoim today. And Chodesh, the Chiddush of Elul is, we can be Mechadish ourselves. We can begin to infuse into our Avodas Hashem newness and freshness that we never, or that we have not had, perhaps in months and months and months and months, since maybe last year, in the ELUL time when we promised HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to be the most amazing Jew this year. There's a Maisa that is told over of an Ufraf. And the Kala's father came to the Ufraf as well. It's a very big custom. When a Chassan and Kala are getting married, so the Kala has a Shabbos Kala, the mothers stay by there, and when it comes to the Ufraf, the father, even the father of the Kala, goes to the Ufraf as well. And it was Shalosh Shudas time, and they asked the father of the Kala to say a few words. Now the Kala was a Baal Tshuva, and the father was a Baal Tshuva. And listen to the story that he told over. He said several years ago, he said, I grew up in a pretty irreligious family. A little bit of tradition was here and there, but not much. He said, several years ago, my father passed away. And I decided as a zechus for my father's neshama, I'm going to observe the year of Avelus like I've never observed mitzvahs before. I decided, number one, I'm going to daven every single day with a minyan so I can say Kaddish. I'm going to put on tefillin every single day. Of course, Shabbos and Yom Tov not. I'm going to start keeping Shabbos in the schus of my father's neshama. And where he lived, the only real minyan was very early in the morning. So he had to wake up at 6:30 on Shabbos morning, 3 hours earlier than he was used to. But he said, I will do it all in the merit of my father's neshama. Sure enough, he goes a year, an amazing year. Shachris, every day, tefillin, kaddish, mincha, mariv, Shabbos, wake up early, being almost like a frum yid, and it was very hard, but he did it because he knew that it would be a nachas ruach to his father. The year of Avelis of mourning was over, and he says, phew, I made it, Baruch Hashem. I kept Shabbos, I woke up early, I put on tefillin, I daven, I said Kaddish. The year is now over. He says, Rabbi Nishal, it was nice knowing you. I'm going back to where I was before. It was a much more comfortable way of life. Saturday, you wake up, you go to the beach, you take a car ride, you get some food in the restaurant, you enjoy yourself. In the morning, you could sleep in as late as you want. This whole thing about running to shul, putting on the tefillin, it's too much of a hassle. I'm going to go back to the way that I was living as a very good Chiloni Israeli here in Eretz Yisrael. He said about 4 or 5 months after he made his departure from all the mitzvahs that he took upon himself, his daughter, the Kala, was walking across the street, and suddenly out of nowhere a car came zooming by and smashed right into her. She went flying and she landed on her head. They sent in the Hatzalah, they sent in the ambulances, helicopter came down, swooped her up, took her to the hospital called Tel Hashomer Hospital, and they put her into the ICU, and she was in a comatose state. Brain damage, they had no idea the extent. The parents come running to the hospital. The doctor comes walking out of the operating room, and he does not have a very good expression on his face. And he says, I'm sorry to tell you, we don't know what's going to be with your daughter. She's taken a very bad hit. It's in a very delicate area of the brain. We don't know what's going to be. Right now, she's in a coma. We can keep her life going as long as is possible. We don't know. And the father said, I looked at the doctor pleadingly, and I asked him, Doctor, when will my daughter wake up? And the doctor said, Sir, I told you, I have no idea what's going to happen. He said, it went on like this for 5 days in the hospital. My wife and I were crying. We're so sad. This poor girl, 16, 17 years old, prime of her life, taken like that. And on the 5th day in the hospital, I find myself standing in the hospital room alone with my daughter. Coma, not moving, no signs of life, nothing, lifeless, limbless, nothing. And I begin holding on to my daughter's hand. And I say, Ribono shel Olam, I got the message. You liked me when I was keeping Shabbos. You liked me when I was putting on tefillin. You liked me when I was waking up early in the morning going to Shachris. I got the message. But oy vavoy, you had descended in such a stark way and hurt my daughter like this. Please, Ribono shel Olam, whatever you want from me, I'll do. You want Shabbos? I'll keep Shabbos. You want Shachris? Mincha, I'll do it all. Kashrus, from life, whatever you want. But I'm begging you, bring my daughter back to life. He says, and then I started crying out to Hashem. And I said, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm asking you for a favor. Don't wait to see that you're judging me over the next 1 or 2 years to see that I'm serious and sincere about this and that I'm committed to Shabbos, committed to Kashrus, committed to being frum. Don't wait another second. I'm begging you. I want the Yeshua, the salvation now. I want you to bring my daughter back to life right now. I'm promising you I'll do what you want. And the father says, as he's standing there crying, holding his daughter's hand, begging Hashem for a miracle, he suddenly feels something tingling in his hand. And he looks down, and his daughter is moving her arms and her hands like this. And her legs start moving. And the next thing you know, her eyes open up. And within the next 24 hours, my daughter was back to who she was before the accident. And the doctors could not explain a thing. They said it was a miracle. And I knew it. I committed myself to Hashem. And since that day in the hospital, I have become frum. My wife has become frum. My children has become frum. And today, my daughter is sitting by her Shabbos Kala. She's going to marry this fine chassan over here. All because we're a family who committed ourselves to Hashem. That's chiddush. That's a chiddush. When a person recognizes what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, and they make the growth, and they make the commitments. But think about it like this. We have a Rosh Chodesh every single month. Every month the moon waxes and it wanes. It gets bigger and it wanes, it gets smaller. The beginning of the month, Rosh Chodesh, you'll take a look in the sky on Monday night. The moon is going to be big or it's going to be small? It's going to be so small you will barely be able to see one little sliver that is there. At the time of the month, when you're being mechadish the month, it's a new month. I would expect the moon should be full and beaming and glowing in all of its grandeur. But at the time of the new month, it's so small you can barely see that sliver in the sky. And then it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows over the month till it gets full and beautiful and it's shining bright. When the moon was so small at the beginning of the month, did the moon really shrink? Is the rest of the 99% of the moon not there? It's all there. It's just covered up by the sun that's in front of it. And every day the sun moves a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, until it reveals the moon in its entirety. A chiddush in life, in Torah, in mitzvahs, in avodas Hashem, doesn't mean that you need to recreate and reinvent and come up with something that you never did before. Chiddush means that everything is there inside of you already. All your grandeur, all your glory, all your shine, it's all there. It just waxes and it wanes. And as a year goes on, it often wanes and wanes and wanes. We forget who we really are on the inside. We forget the koichos, the godless, the greatness that is there. Says the Rebbe, I'm giving you a month called Elul, and the month of Elul is for you to wax, as they say, to wax, to grow. It's the month where you begin to go back inside of yourself and all those moments in your life that you had a chiyus, that you enjoyed, that you loved Torah, you loved mitzvahs, that you were growing, that you were steiging. You need to begin to look at it once again as a brand new edict from Hashem, where you're going to pull out from yourself the enthusiasm, the excitement, the connection, the Yirah Shamayim, the Simcha Zachayim, the Simcha Shel Mitzvahs. I'm going to pull it out from inside all over again. Because it never left you. It just got covered up by all the different things of this world that we let cover us up. Elul is the cleansing process. I begin to cleanse off the schmutz. I clean away the pressures. I clean away the mechitzas. I clean away the people that have not been such a good influence. I clean away the things that I'm doing that are not so good for me. I clean it all away. And by the time that we get to Rosh Hashanah, even though that it's once again Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah, and if you look in the sky, the moon is hidden, but by the time Rosh Hashanah comes, you are shining bright. Because you were mechadesh. You renewed yourself on a level, on a madrega, that you never even realized that you could reach. And this is what we have to keep in mind this month. This is why it's a matana tova. It's such a gift, such a treasure, such a chesed. Hashem gives us a chance before we come to the Yom Adin, before we're going to get judged, before there's going to be a decision of all of Klal Yisrael. What is the year going to look like? We need to show Hashem what we look like. And we are revealing our neshamas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Rosh Hashanah because of all the work that we put in starting now. On Monday night. Or when you hear Rosh Chodesh ELUL, you'll think to yourself, wow, look at the opportunity that I have. You're going to faint out of the awe, out of the excitement that you have a chance for an entire month to run to Hashem and to reveal the great koiches that are there inside your neshama. When Hashem sees that, how could he not move from Kisei Adin to Kisei Rachamim? How could he not make a decision to push away the harsh year that all of Klal Yisrael had and say, it's going to be a much better year. The Yisayimim, their hearts will be healed, and the Almanas, they will find respite from their pain. And the parents who ended up losing their children in the war, or the soldiers who lost their limbs, there will be healing that will take place. And the battles and the enemies of Klal Yisrael, they will cease and Mashiach will come. We're davening for this year. But it all depends on us. What will we look like on Rosh Hashanah? Nice new clothes? For sure you're going to have. Squeaky clean? For sure you'll be. But how beautiful is your neshama going to look before Hashem? You're the only one that can prepare yourself in that way. I want to leave you off with one last story. I have a good friend who's a Rav in an out-of-town community. And I once went there for a chasana, and he took me all around that he wanted to show me his community, and he happens to be Sephardi, and the Sephardi community is very close-knit. And one of the things that they pride themselves on is that there's a lot of ahavat Yisrael between them. They love each other very much. There's no competition. One shul doesn't compete with another one, and this color doesn't with that one. They're all very close, and they're all trying to be mechazik, the neshamas of Klal Yisrael. So he told me, as we're walking along, he's telling me all about the different things that they do, and then we bump into a certain Rav. And the man is very, very tall. He must have been like 6'4", 6'5", he's huge. We'll call his name. He has a very interesting last name. His name is Rabbi Naharzin. That's his last name. And he introduced this Rabbi Naharzin. Wow, so Rabbi, this is my friend from Los Angeles. We meet. He's a very special person. You can see on his face, a very special person. When he walks away, my friend says, I have to tell you an amazing story with him. This past year, he says, one of the things that the Sephardim did, we went on like a trip to Eretz Yisrael. Each Sephardi Rav was able to take like 5 of his balabatim with him. Or if he's in Kiruv, 5 of the people he's in Kiruv with. And we all went together. There are like 10 of us, so like 50 guys all together, plus the Rebbeim. It was a whole chush of a group. And we went to Eretz Yisrael for a chizuk tour. Holy sites, Gedolei Yisrael, learning Torah, davening where we should daven. We did Tiyulim also, but it was a very, very big chizuk tour. It was one of the last nights that we were there. And we were staying in Tzfas. And it was getting late at night. And this Rabbi Naharzin, he says, very late, like around 11, 12 o'clock at night, he says, you know what? I just realized we didn't stop in Tiberia. And we didn't daven by the Kibbutz Tzadikim. The Rambam is buried in Tiberia. The Shlach Kodosh is the special tefillah for children. He's in Tiberia. Many Tanoim Amaroim are buried in Tiberia. We didn't daven in Tiberia. He says, who wants to come with me right now? Like, Rabbi, it's like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. He says, no, we have a tender, we have a big van. Who wants to come? Let's go right now. It takes about an hour to get there. We'll daven, we'll come back. So my friend said, I'll go. And another rabbi says, I'll go. And then a few guys, the next thing you know, they have about 20 people getting into the big van, midnight, whatever it is, and they drive down to Tiberia. And they go down by the cave of the Rambam and the Shlach Kodesh and the other great tzaddikim that are there. And now it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. And this Rav Naharzin says, Rabbotai, he said, there's one more cave that I want to daven out while we're here. It's not in this cemetery, it's in the old cemetery of Tiberia. Would you mind, we're already here, would you mind coming with me to this caver? It's a very special tzaddik. He used to be the Av Bezdin of Tiberia many, many years ago. Would you come with me to daven in this caver? So they saw that it was very meaningful to him. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, they're there. They said, sure, let's go. So they drive into the old cemetery in Tiberia, and they park the van, and they walk over to this caver. And the big Rav Naharzin stands there in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning. Can just imagine, I've ever been in Tiberia, the scene was going on right now. And he says, we've come to the caver of Rav Yaakov Chai Naharzan. Same last name, but we're not related. He said, I've always had an interest in previous Gedolei Yisrael from the earlier generations. And I'm always looking into different Rabbanim and different people that caught my eye. And being Sfardi, I looked very much at Sfardi Chachamim. And one day I came across Rav Yaakov Chai Naharzan, and I said, wow, look at that. He has the same exact last name as me. Very intriguing. I did research, I realized we're not really related as far as I can tell, but so interesting his name, and I began looking into him. He was the Av Bezdin over here. He was the head of the Bezdin in Tiberia. He had a shul. He was a big mechazik over here. He was a very holy Jew. And as I was learning about him and studying about him, I even came once to, I even came to Tiberia, and I davened by his caver. My wife was expecting a child. And when my child was born, it was a boy. I said, you know what? We're going to name him Yaakov Chai, after the tzaddik Yaakov Chai Naharzin. Same name. And my son is growing up, and I kept telling him, you know who you are? Shh, you know, you're named after Yaakov Chai, the tzaddik from Tiberia. And when my son was 5 years old, we took a trip to Eretz Yisrael. And I said, you know what? He kept telling me, Tati, Abba, let's go to the seminary. I want to daven by his caver. And my father said, it's been such a long time since I was there. I'm not sure they'll be able to find it. No, please, Tati, please, Abba, take us. So we go to the cemetery, and I'm driving. I cannot find the caver. I forgot where the grave was. And I told my son, you know what? We're here in the cemetery. We can just daven. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the kavanas of our heart. That's good enough. He said, no, Abba, I want to find the grave. And next thing I turn around, my son is gone. He's running around looking. And suddenly I hear, Abba, I found him. And I follow my son's voice, and lo and behold, there it is. He's standing by the grave of Yaakov Chai, who he's named after. And we daven, and my son feels so connected to this tzaddik. My son's getting older, his bar mitzvah is coming, and he says, Abba, I don't want my bar mitzvah over here. I want my bar mitzvah in Eretz Yisrael, and I want to be bar mitzvah in Yaakov Chai's shul. The same shul that he was in Tiberia, where he was the Rav, I want to be bar mitzvah in his shul. I want to learn the Torah. I want to pray the tefillot. I want to be bar mitzvah where he was the Rav. And I said to my son, listen, it's expensive and this and it's a big trip and the mother and all the kids and everything. And he said, no, that's why I want my bar mitzvah. And he fought. I said, you know what? Why not? It will solidify my son's connection with Yaakov Chai for the rest of his life. And so I called in advance and I told them, I have a boy, his name is Yaakov Chai, the same name of the Rav, and we want to make the bar mitzvah there, and we're going to make a kiddush and a seudah, and it'll be very nice, and you can invite the entire community. And suddenly we roll into town and we come in, and this is the Yaakov Chai. There were older Yidden in the shul that still remembered the original Yaakov Chai, who was the Rav. And it was an emotional, uplifting, spiritual, ruchnius affair. And my son was outstanding. He learned everything. It was incredible. And the old men were crying. They couldn't believe this is Yaakov Chai living on the next generation. And it was incredible. And it was amazing. And my son was such a tzaddik. He was so special. And then my friend tells me that this father, around 6'4", 6'5", suddenly breaks down and he starts crying uncontrollably. And he says, but that was 10 years ago. He says, Rabbi Shalom, you know what has happened to Yaakov Chai in the last 10 years. He's barely holding by a mitzvah, by a Shabbos, by a kashrus, by a tefillah, nothing anymore. And he says, Yaakov Chai, in the schos of Yaakov Chai, who's buried over here, I'm begging you, Rabbi Shalom, please, bring my son back. I'm begging you, please bring him back. And there was not a dry eye from all the Rabbanim and all the men. They were crying and crying and crying. And everybody was davening for this kid. And they stayed there for a long time, crying and davening. And the father was crying and crying and crying. They came back. They went back to wherever they had to go in their community. And the father came back with renewed strength and determination. And he and his wife got hadrach and how to deal with their Yaakov Chai, the boy that's wearing rings and a shaved off head and no shayches. And this story is 1.5 years old. And my friend told me he just saw his father in Yaakov Chai a few weeks ago. And Yaakov Chai is wearing tzitzis, very long tzitzis. And he has a yarmulke. He's a cool guy right now, and he's slick and everything. But the kid is on his way back. Klal Yisrael waxes, and we wane. But even when we wane, even when we get small, we have to realize it's all in there. Just like the moon didn't disappear, and Hashem's creating a new moon, the whole moon is there. We just can't see everything. So too, when we wane, when we get smaller, we're all there. The koiches, everything is there. It's just one thing HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, that we should be machadish ourselves, renew ourselves, and bring back all those koiches that we once used, or maybe that we never used before. Dig in and reveal them to ourselves and reveal them to the Ribono Shel Olam. And Be'ez Hashem, in that zechus of taking this matana tova, this tremendous gift of ELUL, of using it in the right way, of being misaken our maisim, fixing ourselves up, waxing more and more and more every single day, by the time that we're standing before the Ribono Shel Olam on Rosh Hashanah, will be as bright as the moon on the darkest of nights. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, you were mechadish yourself, and therefore you deserve a new year. Not just for you, but for all of Klal Yisrael. May we be Zeichem Yetz Hashem to utilize, starting on Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Elul, through the month of Elul into Rosh Hashanah, says Yom Tshuva, Yom Kippur, to use the time wisely, to dedicate ourselves and commit ourselves to real avodah, the avodas ha'elul, the avodas of the Yomim, the Royim, and in that zechus we should all be zeicha to aksiva chasima toiva, should be year of bracha and atzlacha, simcha and nachas, refuah and yeshua for all of Klal Yisrael, with the bias koyal tzedek b'mheira v'yameinu.